Everyone. Good morning and welcome to this JINSA webinar on an update on the latest on Operations Epic Fury and Roaring Lion and the war with Iran. I'm Blaise Mishtal, JINSA's Vice President for Policy, and I'm honored to be joined by two of my esteemed colleagues, General Frank McKenzie, the former commander of CENTCOM, right there and obviously in the heart of what's going on in this war, and the JINSA Hertog Distinguished Fellow, General McKenzie. Thank you. Welcome for joining us. And Major General Yaakov Aish, JINSA's Jenny and Julian Josephson, Senior Vice President for Israeli Affairs, former Israeli Defense Attaché here in Washington, and Director of Operations at the Kiryat. General Aish, thank you for being with us. In the past couple of days, I think we've seen a lot of developments in the war, with a lot of it centered on the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf and attempts to make sure that commercial shipping can get through, from President Trump's ultimatum that he gave on Saturday to Iran, to the postponement of that ultimatum. And I think most recently, President Trump said yesterday that the war is already won. But General McKenzie, I wanted to start with you and get your assessment of how the war is progressing and how operations are going, whether the U.S. is achieving its objectives. But first, also wanted to congratulate you. You were appointed, I think, just yesterday or the day before, to be the next commandant of the Citadel. And I think that is a terrific honor and a great privilege for all those young future Marines that will now be under your tutelage. So, congratulations. But eager to get your thoughts on where we are in this war, I guess now in its fourth week.
Blaise, first of all, thank you for your kind words, and always happy to join this group and offer my thoughts. The audience is always very well informed. The questions are great, and I particularly enjoy the interaction. So, we're pushing 4 weeks into the war. I think we're accomplishing the objectives that we set out. CENTCOM is executing a long prepared campaign plan. This is not something that we're drawing up on the back of the envelope day to day. These are things that have been studied for many years, refined for many years, simulated, war gamed, every way that you can. We've examined this problem. I have some responsibility for this plan, as does my predecessor, as does my successor. But we've been working on this for a long time. So I think if you're sitting down at CENTCOM right now, you are satisfied with where you are. And let me sort of break it down a little bit and tell you, I think, how they might be looking at it and how we might assess it. One of the key things you look at CENTCOM is Iran able to generate significant volleys of ballistic missiles, either against Israel or against our bases in the region, or against our friends in the region, their cities and their infrastructure. And largely, we have denied them the ability to do that. I used to worry as the CENTCOM commander about 250 volleys, a volley of 250 missiles against Al Udeid Air Base or Al Dhafra. And that has not materialized. And I'll talk about why that hadn't materialized in just a minute. But the fact of the matter is, that's allowed us to continue to use, in some modified fashion, our forward bases against Iran. And I don't know the mechanics of the actual execution of what we're doing, and wouldn't be appropriate for me to talk about it if I did. But I think we're still getting a lot of use out of those bases. I worry that those bases would be knocked out early in a potential conflict with Iran. That has not happened. And Iran has not either also been able to mount massive volleys against Israel. Have they been able to fire some number of missiles against all these targets? Yes, but not the massive volleys that I think what we thought would make it hard for us to defend those installations. And I don't mean to say those installations haven't been hit. Some of them have been hit. Some damage has been done. But largely, we're able to continue our operations. That's very important. So why have we been able to have this success against Iran? First of all, I think the decapitation strike at the very beginning of this war was effective in reducing Iranian command and control, made it hard for them to develop how they wanted to actually execute the plan. The fact that they were able to respond very quickly, albeit in an uncoordinated manner, talks about the decentralization of Iranian command control, able to respond quickly, but really not in a coherent manner. Additionally, we've been able to take out Iranian air defenses to the degree that I would argue we have effectively air supremacy over most of Iran. And what that has given us the opportunity to do is go hunt for ballistic missiles. And that means you look for where they're stored, you look for where they're fired, you look for the vehicles that transport them to the firing point. You do all of those things. And when you have the level of air supremacy that we do now, you're not limited to fifth generation aircraft up there, which by fifth generation aircraft, I mean F-35, F-22, and B-2. Now you can go north with F-15, F-16, F-18, A-10 to some degree, and of course the B-1. So you can use these large bomb trucks now, and you're not necessarily limited to standoff munitions. So you can use shorter range munitions to engage these targets. So I think what we've been able to do is really effectively knock out a significant fraction, perhaps the vast majority of Iranian ballistic missiles. And I think also, frankly, Blaze, the Iranians made a mistake in designing their ballistic missile force. They mistook hardening and bearing for security. And the truth of warfare today is this: if you can see it, you can hit it. And if you can hit it, you can kill it. And even if you dig yourself deep underground with these beautiful missile cities or whatever they call them, with beautiful pictures of missiles stacked up going way into the background, that just makes it easier for us to strike and destroy these missiles wholesale rather than retail. Because what you want to do is you want to get the missile before it launches. You want to get it in a storage area. And I think this has proven to be a major mistake by Iran in the way they've chosen to array their ballistic missile force. And it's going to aid us actually as we continue to effect suppression going forward. So I think CENTCOM's got to be pretty happy with where we are in terms of the ballistic missile exchange, where we are in continuing to continue to dominate their ability to fire those missiles. Second category is drones. Look, drones over the last 10 years, there's been an explosion in drone technology. We are still absorbing how to employ and defend against drones, as is really everybody else. And so that has given the Iranians, I won't say an opportunity, but they have flown a lot of cheap, easily manufactured, low-cost drones against us. We're getting better at stopping them. The same rules apply about drones as ballistic missiles. You want to get drones before they launch. You want to get them in the supply chain. You want to get them where they're stored. You want to get them where they're built. You want to do all those things. And that's a very important, and we're having success doing that. So I'm very pleased with where we are right now. Look, I think every day that passes, Iran's going to have fewer drone options going forward. Doesn't mean they're going to go to zero. I wish we could say that. Doesn't mean we're going to get to zero. But it does mean we're going to reduce their opportunity to do this. And again, the best way to do that is going to be by striking where the drones are manufactured, where they're launched. The worst way to do it is to defend them in the terminal area. By that, I mean at the objective. So we're working all these things right now. I'm satisfied with where we are. The next thing I'll talk to is where we are in the Strait of Hormuz, where we are with the Iranian Navy. And as you know, there are actually two Iranian navies, there's the IRN and the IRGCN. I think both those navies, in terms of large combatants, largely gone. We struck them all. So I think what we're doing now is we're focusing on preparatory steps in order to clear the Strait of Hormuz. What that means is first clearing those craft, getting rid of Iranian submarines, looking at the fast attack craft, the small cigarette boat type vessels that can swarm out from the southern coast of Iran, the northern edge of the littoral there, to affect shipping in the region. You go after those with slow moving aircraft, perhaps A-10s, perhaps attack helicopters, perhaps ATACMs from across the Gulf, a variety of weapon systems that we can employ to get after those targets. Also, short range Iranian anti-ship cruise missiles that have been built, targeted, and dug in on the northern edge of the littoral. Again, digging in's a mistake. We can see where you did it. We can strike it. We can get to you. So CENTCOM is busy on a program of doing that. I think there are probably some days left ahead of work to finish that, but it's progressing. That leaves us with mines. The Iranians have a large and capable stack of mines. I'm sure CENTCOM over the last few days has been going after where they're stored, how they get to the pier, the ships that take them out. I know we sank a lot of mine layers here in recent days, and so I think all that is very positive. Now, what it's going to lead to at some point, you can go up if you think there are mines in the water, and I think that I've heard assessments that they have not actually done any kind of serious mining. That's good. That would be the smart thing for them to do. But if they choose to mine it, we do have the ability to clear the mines. Before you send your mine countermeasures vessels up there, though, you want to make sure that there's no way for those mine countermeasure vessels to be hit which is what CENTCOM is doing right now, removing Iranian ability to go after those minesweepers as they go into the Gulf. Eventually, you'll be able to proof a route. Remember, you don't have to clear the whole Strait of Hormuz. You got to clear a route that you're going to bring vessels through. So you're not clearing every bit of water up there. You're clearing the bit of water that you're going to use for your high value units as you come in. Marines have entered the region. There's talk of elements of the 82nd Airborne. All of those capabilities give additional options to the CENTCOM commander. We could use those Marines in raids up and down the Iranian littoral. We could use those Marines potentially to seize Carag Island. I don't know if we're going to do that. I have no idea. But I can tell you, again, these are not back of the envelope plans that we thought up in the last week or two. We've considered all these options for many years. We've war gamed them. We've looked at contingencies. And the 82nd Airborne would certainly have a role to play if we choose either to seize ground or to provide security for other installations in the region. So what you're seeing is Brad Cooper is getting more capabilities that he can use. Let me talk about Carag Island for just a minute, sort of to close out. If you control Carag Island, you effectively control the Iranian ability to export oil. You can control Carag Island one of a couple of ways. You can destroy their capability, their oil transfer capability on that island, which will shut the Iranian economy down, but have a pernicious effect on the global economy. Or you can seize Carag Island, which also shuts the Iranian economy down, keeps open the option of opening it in the future, and also gives you the opportunity to actually hold Iranian soil, which could be a key negotiating thing for something going forward. So I'll say in closing, a lot of things are beginning to come together. This isn't a plan that takes 1 or 2 days to execute. It takes a few weeks to execute. We're now in the heart of the plan, and generally, I'm satisfied with where we are right now, and I'll pause there.
Thank you for that great overview, General McKenzie. And I think maybe going forward, I like that checklist that you gave us: the ballistic missiles, the drones, the Navy, the Strait, the U.S. assets that are being surged into the region. Maybe we'll go down and dig deeper into all of those a little later. I did just want to ask you quickly before pivoting to General Aish. You said this is not a plan that unfolds overnight. Uh, to the best of your sense, given that you were involved in some of the planning that has contributed to the operation we're now in, how far along are we, and how much more time would you expect is needed to achieve U.S. operational objectives?
So, I think we're close on a lot of these objectives right now. You want to be able to. The key thing is, I think what has emerged as an important priority, of course, is the Strait of Hormuz. And we haven't talked about the nuclear program. That's always a contingency that we could hold and go after should we choose to do that. I think we're still a little ways away from being ready to declare the Strait of Hormuz, ready to accept minesweepers. But I would, I'm not in as much operational detail as I would like to be able to give you that. I would say we're in a pretty good place right now.
Right.
Probably a little work left to do, but we're in a pretty good place right now.
Thank you. General Aish, if I could maybe ask you the same question, focusing on just the Iranian front for now. What is your assessment of IDF Operation Roaring Lion, and how far along it is in achieving its objectives and how it's progressing?
Well, to listen carefully to General McKenzie, it's quite amazing. I'm going back in my thoughts 10 or 12 years to the days that we were in service in the Pentagon, and I was in Washington and thinking about the strategic goals of the US and Israel. And I'm listening carefully to the list that General McKenzie gave, and I'm identifying the level of coordination and similarity between those strategic goals. It's quite amazing. And in terms of those, I think when I'm watching carefully what have happened to the nuclear program of the Iranians so far, I'm talking about Rising Lion in June and now, and I'm thinking about the achievements in that area, together with the ballistic missiles capabilities, i.e. the stockpiles, the launchers, and the production capabilities. It's pretty amazing. And I'm starting with those two strategic goals because they were very important for both of us, for Israel and for the US in this war. And in terms of how to achieve it, it seems like we together made a significant progress. I don't want to dive into a percentage, but when I'm experiencing the number of ballistic missiles that the Iranians are launching in the last week or 2 weeks towards Israel, the average is around 10 ballistic missiles. When I'm thinking about the potential that they have had, Blaze, and you know it very well, at the end of Operation Rising Lion, they had a significant potential to launch a significant amount. And due to what the US and the IDF have done since the beginning of this campaign, we degraded significantly their capabilities in terms of ballistic missiles and in terms of their nuclear program. And I'm starting with that because at the end of the day, these are the two major capabilities that we wanted to either eliminate or to degrade significantly. And by that, and by some other elements that were described by General McKinsey, we wanted to achieve a situation that will allow a regime change in the future in Iran. And I think we are on that track. If you would have tell me that this will be the situation after less than a month into the campaign that started in February 28th, 10 years ago, I will tell you that you are dreaming. And I think it's pretty amazing in terms of decapitation, in terms of air supremacy, in terms of the ballistic missiles, in terms of the nuclear program, the maritime capabilities that were eliminated, and so on and so forth. I think it's pretty amazing. Now we are entering a strategic phase that was described here, i.e. the oil, the Carag Island, the Hormuz Straits. And there are two ways to solve it. One is the diplomatic channel that is under a discussion between the US and the Iranians via certain mediators. And there is the military option. It is fully there. And when you are analyzing carefully the achievements that were achieved till now, it seems like both options are viable. And I think the major reason for the Iranians to go into this negotiation is because they know that it's very imminent. It's very close. That both options are seriously on the table. And I think it serves us in Iran, and it serves us also, and maybe we'll talk about it later, in Lebanon and elsewhere. You know, Israel is facing the Iranian front and some others. And wherever you see a proxy over here, you would find the Iranians behind it. So in that sense, it serves us in both arenas, in the eastern one and in the north. And I assume that we'll talk about it later on.
General, thank you for that. General McKenzie, I think I'll use your checklist as sort of our organizational tool here. So let me start with ballistic missiles and play a little bit of devil's advocate. Yes, we're not seeing the launches of 250 missiles per salvo. We're not seeing, as we know, the Iranians were preparing back in June, a mass launch of 700 to 1,000 ballistic missiles in retaliation for Israel's attack. But we saw yesterday, according to JINSA data, because we do track this, 55 missiles launched, which is more missiles than Iran was able to launch on the fourth day of the war. Sorry, on the fifth day of the war. They're still launching quite a bit, despite the fact that we've had thousands of strikes by the U.S. Air Force, by the IAF, hunting these capabilities. Are you surprised that they still retain as much launch capability as they do?
No, I'm not. Look, this is war. It's not a business deal. It's not a trained schedule. It's the conflict of naked human will. And sometimes the bad guy has a good day. So no, and what you can't do in a campaign like this is look at it sort of day to day. You can't say, well, they had a good day today, therefore our plan's bad. We have a good plan. I'm confident the plan will execute. I'm confident we'll be able to reduce these. The Iranians, through whatever means, were able to get a lot of missiles in the air yesterday. Let's see what they do today. Let's see what they do tomorrow. Let's see if they can sustain it. That will be the test. You have to take a longer view when you examine these problems. You can't look at them through a slice where, oh, they had a good event happen for him. They're going to have good things occur for them occasionally. Every day, though, I think the opportunity for good things happening for Iran narrows as we continue to press our attack. So am I surprised? No. Would I be worried? Not particularly. You know what? I'm sure what they're doing at CENTCOM, and I'm sure with Israel, you're looking at how did this happen? What can we do to prevent it today, going forward?
Sort of along the same lines, but on the defensive side, I guess let me ask, are you concerned about our interceptor stockpiles running out before we can complete operations? How much of a stress are we feeling on the defensive side?
Well, as the CENTCOM commander, you're always worried about the stockpile of interceptors. So that I was worried about it. I'm sure Admiral Cooper's worried about it. The best way, though, to stop this threat is to not have to fire the interceptors. Is to go up and get the missiles before they can launch. The least efficient, the most costly, and the least effective way to stop them is with using your interceptors. So I think everybody that's addressing this problem is keenly aware of that concept, from CENTCOM to the department to everyone else. We're working very hard to make it impossible or difficult for Iran to launch those missiles. That way, you can look. You're a lot better with fewer missiles in the air than you are with a lot of missiles in the air. That allows you to husband your stock of interceptors. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that we're looking at it. We have ways to cross balance globally. We practice that. We track it, and so I think I have no idea where those stocks are now. Just simply no idea. But I know we look at it very hard. But again, I come back to the point I made earlier. The best way to keep your stocks high is to prevent launch.
General
Blaise,
Ice,
I'd
yeah.
like to add on that a few things. There is the strategic, operational, and technological dimension to the defensive capabilities. Now, I'll start with the strategic dimension. When I'm thinking about the amount of ballistic missiles launched by the Iranians compared to what they have planned, I think they are in a very, very bad place. And this is due to the fact that not only their command control capabilities were shattered since the day one of this war, it's also because we are, together with the US, hunting their launching capabilities or sealing their tunnels, delaying their capabilities to launch. This is on the strategic level. On the technological level, a lot have happened in the last a year, and I'm not sure that I can elaborate on that in two terms. One, in the terms of being able to be fully coordinated with CENTCOM capabilities, and I'll leave it there. And the second element is upgrading the technological capabilities. The players that are intercepting incoming threats towards Israel and other places are totally different, and we took them to the next level together with the US. So it gives us, at the end of the day, greater capacity, better capabilities in different altitudes. Having said that, I'll join General McKenzie. This is something that you have to calculate very carefully together with the whole idea of how you are managing the campaign at the offensive side and not only at the defensive side.
Yeah, and to your technological point there, General Ice, I think we've seen videos emerge from this war of Iron Dome intercepting ballistic missiles, which is not something it was designed for, but really an incredible development and innovation that Israel's been able to bring to bear sort of at the speed of war. But let me ask you, given the two strikes that we saw in recent days near Deona, more specifically, your sense of Israel's defenses and whether they're holding what the stockpile levels are at, their ability. Why did these two missiles slip through? Was it a decision not to fire on them because of interceptor concerns? Did they somehow evade Israeli detection? Should we be concerned?
Well, our system, as you know, is not 100%. We know that. We are in a very, very good percentage of intercepting incoming threats, but it's not 100%. For that, we have some other capabilities in how to complete the defensive capabilities. And as I mentioned, offensive capabilities are part of it. Regarding Dimona and Arad, these are two unfortunate incidents. Both of them, by the way, were debriefed by the Israeli Air Force, and we didn't find any systematic failure or something like that. We know that this is part of the statistics, and we are not 100% protected. But going back again to my argument, uh, when you are thinking about what they have achieved since day one until now in terms of launching capability, think about how the neighborhood, the region is watching them. For years, they were a very formidable threat for the region in terms of their offensive ballistic missiles capabilities, where they are, what is their performance. Add to it what have happened to Hezbollah and still happening. I think they are losing that strategic deterrence that they have created quite successfully for many years. So when I'm watching the events, how they are unfold in the last months on the ground, together with the strategic posture of the Iranians, I think it's now very clear why they are aiming to negotiate and to achieve as much as they can via negotiation, because they are in a very, very bad shape.
One last question on the missile issue, because this was such a critical threat and driver of both Rising Lion and the current operations. As we think about how and when the war concludes, what is an acceptable level of remaining missile capability that the US and or Israel would be willing to leave Iran with? If they're still firing 50 missiles a day, is that okay? If they're still capable of firing 20 missiles a day, is that okay? Do we have to get them to zero and zero missiles left in order to achieve our strategic objectives? Is it possible to put a number or an approximation on it, General McKenzie?
I think it's hard to put a number on it. I think what you'd like to see is something definitive in terms of missile production facilities. And look, we're going to have the ability, given the air supremacy we have over Iraq now, and will have for the foreseeable future, to put a pretty restrictive monitoring regime in place should we choose to do that. So I think I would say less than the number of missiles remaining is the whole chain of building missiles and types of missiles that we're going to be interested in. So I would look for something there, some kind of a position there, rather than although I think we've reduced a vast number of their missiles. Look, they're always going to be onesies and twosies, and maybe more than that out there, but they're not going to be able to sustain that kind of rate of fire.
General Aish, anything on how Israel thinks about what the
I think what we can see it, by the way, in the last 10 days, that the IDF is very much focusing on their production capabilities. It's not only their stockpiles, as the US and us dealt with at the early days of the war, and the tunnels and launchers, but also their production capabilities. But Iran is a very, very vast area. And for that, we need time. And that's why we are investing quite a lot of resources in going after their production capacity. Having said that, at the end of the day, assume that everything is eliminated. Something is left. So they will have a capability in place. That's why the diplomatic measures and negotiation and the type of inspection, I would say intrusive inspection or agreement that will be achieved is a vital element, to complete the successful efforts, war efforts that were implemented by the US and by Israel over here. Without that, I don't think it will be enough. Going back to the position of Iran that I've described 5 minutes ago, I think it's part of the deal. That's why that agreement at the end, and their, I would say, strategic posture in the region at the day after is a vital element. And the ballistic missiles that deterred the region, specifically the Gulf countries, and to some extent Israel, are an important element. And it's far more than numbers. It's production capability, it's know-how, and it's also the range. What we have seen towards Diego Garcia is a threat for Europe. Now it's only a matter of time that something like that will be implemented to extort the Europeans and maybe others. We can see it already happening at the Hormuz Straits, and these are elements that the Iranians can be using they can use in the future elsewhere. That's why I think it should be a vital element as part of a future agreement, together with the nuclear programs. And it seems like the U.S. is offering a civilian nuclear program under an American umbrella, and it goes with a very intrusive inspection, obviously. So I assume what they are offered is part of that future reasonable agreement, and obviously ballistic missiles and some other type of threats will be part of it.
General McKenzie, next on your list was the drone threat and then the maritime threat. Maybe let me combine those because, as you said, they have not actually mined the Gulf or the Strait, at least in any significant quantities compared to what we saw in the 80s, for example. And the ships that have been hit were hit by missiles or drones. And that seems to be the prominent way at which they're able to hold shipping at risk. So what is our ability, given, as you said, that counter drone remains a challenge at the fixed installations that we have around the Gulf? What is our ability to protect moving ships through the Gulf from the Iranian drone threat?
Well, Blaze, we begin with the same principle as with ballistic missiles. You want to go after where they launch from. You want to go after where they're built, where they're stored. The worst way to shoot a drone, to destroy a drone, is in the air. You want to get it before it launches, left to launch, if you will. You want to do all that before the drone actually gets airborne. So I think what CENTCOM is doing right now is a very aggressive program of sweeping the southern littoral of Iran, the northern edge of the strait, going into the Arabian Gulf, to get rid of those drones and get rid of the launching sites, the command and controls facilities associated with that. That's ongoing. I'm not able to tell you what kind of progress they made. I just don't have access to that information. But I would expect, given the fact we're able to put A-10s, probably rotary wing attack aviation up there, and other slow-moving, highly discriminatory platforms, we're probably having good success with that. So you want to stop that. Now, the other thing is, once the drone's launched, if you're going to send ships through, you're going to escort the ships. You're going to have U.S. warships and hopefully coalition warships that would accompany those ships to get after the drones with the defensive system those ships have. Again, not the preferred way to do it. You'd much rather get the drone before it launches, or with a manned platform, a fighter aircraft going after it, which is not the most efficient way to do it either. But all those things, you shouldn't think of it as a single thing. There are also some promising electromagnetic and other things that are entering the inventory now that I think we're bringing to the field very quickly that will help us against drones. All of those things create a universe designed to make it hard for the Iranians to effectively fly drones down there to strike tankers and our warships in the Strait of Hormuz.
Building on that, I'm sorry, General Aisha, do you want to?
Yeah, I prefer the approach of drying the swamp instead of following every mosquito over here. And in that sense, I think whatever will be achieved, it should be part of the inspection on the Iranians. That's why, and I'm not sure that we are discussing it enough. That's why it's very important with whom you are negotiating in Iran. I don't know if it's Kalibaf or the generals that were left to lead the IRGC. But whoever leads Iran will have to decide what is his path. And the best way is to achieve an agreement where it's very clear to them that it's better for them to go on a different path instead of threatening the region as they did in the last decades.
Thanks. General McKenzie, you mentioned in your introductory remarks that we're deploying a MU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit, and now the 82nd Airborne to the region. Can you talk a little bit about the capabilities they bring to bear and what sort of operational options they give the president in trying to protect the Gulf and secure the Strait?
Well, sure. Let me begin with the Marines. So they'll come on U.S. Navy warships. They're already, I believe, inside the CENTCOM theater now. I'm not sure exactly where they are, but I'm sure they're closing. They give you the ability to strike from the sea. You can go amphibiously. You can go by MV-22. You can go a variety of ways to either execute amphibious raids against islands, against shore targets, against oil platforms, which has been done before with great success back in the 80s. So what it does is, pardon me, it gives options to the theater commander. Those are options that you can exercise outside the Arabian Gulf or inside the Arabian Gulf, depending on if you want to bring those ships in. You could also base the Marines ashore under certain contingencies and fly them like that. So what it does, and Marines bring heavy equipment with them. You can repair runways. You can dig yourself in. You can do limited local air defense. You can do all sorts of things because the Marines come as sort of Swiss Army knife of capabilities that allows you to do a variety of things. The airborne element, and I was a big fan of the airborne element when I was a CENTCOM commander, allows you can strike directly from North Carolina if you choose to do so, and very quickly. So wonderful infantry, you can bring them in. The problem with just airborne alone is they don't have the equipment to sustain themselves for an extended period of time. So you got to have a plan to relieve them, to supply them. And that again, these plans aren't being made up day to day. These are things we've thought about, we've war gamed, we've trained to for a long time. So the combination of Marines and the 82nd give Admiral Cooper options he can exercise anywhere along the Iranian littoral. He can also use them to further defend sites on the southern end of the Arabian Gulf littoral if they're threatened by proxies or something like that. In every way, this is just new capabilities for him that he can use to threaten Iran. So I think it's very timely. Both capabilities, they're very good at working together. A lot of options there for the CENTCOM commander.
Is there an option or perhaps even a requirement to put boots on the ground along the Iranian coasts as a means of securing shipping? Is that, do you think, an option that the president might be considering?
I think it's certainly something we want the Iranians to worry about. I think we want them to worry about it. I think we want them to be very worried about that. So I would certainly leave that on the table, and then I wouldn't share what I was going to do. So I think we're actually about right there. We've talked about a lot of things. Carag Island, there are other islands up there that we can look at. The Iranians have got to be worried about all those locales. The Marines are very good at doing raids from the sea. I'm sure we have special operations forces in the region that can do that. We can deploy the 82nd for some of those missions. So we have a lot of capabilities there now that the Iranians have got to worry about. You want your foe to be worried about what you might do to him, particularly, I would say, in metropolitan Iran, on mainland Iran. And that's something that I would go a step further and say that's something that the personality of President Trump has brought to the fight that was absent under previous presidents. And that's the willingness to entertain these possibilities. Look, the Iranians are very scared about what President Trump might choose to do. That's good. That's where we want them to be. They're scared because with an audit trail going back to the strike on Qasem Soleimani, to the strike on the Iranian nuclear program last June until now, he's proven he's willing to do these things. Whereas other American presidents have been significantly deterred by Iran. He is not deterred by Iran. And that's given him remarkable flexibility and really helps the military campaign that we're running right now.
While we're talking about these forces, let me ask you, we've talked about the missile threat, we've talked about the maritime threat. Another part of the Iranian threat, as General Ice referred to earlier, is the nuclear program. In particular, we know that over 400 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%, almost weapons grade. I guess we believe it's buried under rubble after Operation Midnight Hammer last year. Is either the Marine Expeditionary Unit or the 82nd Airborne that's being sent to the region now, are those units that might be used to go in and secure that nuclear material? Is that something the U.S. would be considering as well?
Hey, Blaze, without being specific at all, I would say we certainly want the Iranians to be very worried about that possibility.
All right. We have a long list of questions already from the audience, so let me just ask General Aish if you could briefly tell us about the Lebanese front and Israeli operations there, and I guess unfolding preparations for perhaps a bigger offensive, it looks like.
Well, I think in terms of what we have seen in Lebanon until now is what was left from Hezbollah is trying to show solidarity with the Iranians. It dragged them into this war, and they opened the northern front, violating the ceasefire that was achieved because they want to show solidarity. It created a very unique situation in Lebanon, where we saw the Lebanese armed forces arresting Hezbollah terrorists, and we saw the government in Lebanon for the first time expelling the Iranian ambassador. But this is really on the very high political level. I want to discuss three possible options that we can identify for Israel in Lebanon, and then to take it one step down to connect it to what we see in Lebanon happening nowadays. The first option for Israel and for the state of Lebanon is total disarmament of Hezbollah. Really put the focus and the pressure on Hezbollah, make sure its military wing is the objective, and really to dissolve its capabilities. The second option is really to renew the famous security zone that Israel have left in May 2000. We were deployed in Lebanon at the security zone, basically between the Litani River and the international border with Lebanon for more than 19 years until May 2000, when we withdraw from Lebanon. And by that, we will be able to remove the imminent threat on the villages and the communities along the Israeli border, and to prevent Hezbollah from redeploying that area. The third option, which I think is the best option, is for the Lebanese government to exercise its sovereignty and really to take responsibility on what is happening in Lebanon as a whole, and specifically on the southern part of Lebanon. Meanwhile, until this or other strategy will be implemented, what we are doing is we are having a very strong defensive position, which are in front of the communities and the villages along the border with Lebanon. And by that, we are securing them and allowing them to stay in the village or kibbutz without them leaving them, as it have happened after October 7th. And the other element is really we are degrading significantly the capabilities of Hezbollah all over Lebanon, not only securing the southern part, but also degrading their capabilities in terms of command and control, launching capabilities, UAVs capabilities, and many others. And by that, we are advancing or promoting a condition for one of those strategies. Meanwhile, there is also a diplomatic channel headed by Ron Dermer, who was appointed by the Israeli Prime Minister on the Israeli side, mediated again by the US with Lebanon and some other players that are trying to play a role over here. But it seems that so far, the IDF deployment is more than enough. Having said that, the Israeli government have confirmed um, the recruiting of 400,000 Israeli reserve troops, and it means that the IDF will be on full readiness should the Israeli government will decide either to take the southern part of Lebanon or to gain control on other areas in Lebanon in order to prevent Hezbollah from threatening the northern sector. This is basically the situation without going into the tactics and all the other constraints and elements that are highly relevant when you are talking about the Lebanese sector.
Thank you for that overview, General Aish. And let me stick with you because our first question from the audience is for you. Missy Ryan from The Atlantic asks, what do we know about how Israel is coordinating the air campaign with the U.S.? Are they sharing the air tasking order? Are they using LNOs in their respective command centers, etc.?
Well, I think in terms of coordination, if we will judge it according to the results, it's unbelievable. And in that sense, it seems like what many others have built in the last, I would say, decade or even more, created the conditions for very close coordinations in few levels. We talked already about the air and missile defense, which is fully coordinated, fully orchestrated by CENTCOM, and we are playing a part in that puzzle as well. And in terms of the offensive part, there are the element of intelligence and the other operational coordination. And I'll say it like that. It's fully coordination. Think about Israeli aircrafts refueled by American aircraft, and at the end of the refueling, the American pilot is, wishing them good luck in their mission. It's unbelievable. When I'm going back just a few years back to our discussions in the past about how to coordinate this type of operation, it was unbelievable. When I'm thinking about that today and the level that it's done, it's far more than just liaison officers. I think it's a very, very close, well coordinated mechanisms that was built for many years via training and war gaming and other tools that were implemented in order to achieve it.
General McKenzie, any insights from you, given that you started as CENTCOM commander without Israel in your AOR and you ended with it?
So I think I can't add to what he said. I would just note that all of this proceeded ultimately from the decision of President Trump to bring Israel into Central Command from European Command. He signed that in January 2021. That's proven to be a very consequential thing. We thought it was important at the time. It looks increasingly important with the virtue of hindsight and what's happened over particularly the last 18 months.
All right, our next
Well,
question.
I'll add on that. I'll add on that only one comment. In 2018, when Jinsa wrote about the need of for Israel to move to the CENTCOM AOR, I was discussing it. You know what? Let's say it very gently with a very high rank general in the IDF, and he says that I'm agnostic to it. I don't want to interfere. It's American business. And nowadays, when I'm speaking with them, they don't believe how effective it is. But yes, it started with Jinsa's recommendations in 2018, and we developed it until, as General McKenzie said, then President Trump approved it in 2021, just before the end of his tenure.
All right, our next question comes from Aaron Miller, who says, incredible briefing. But let me ask you, if things are so great, why do I feel so bad? Quagmire, great tactics, no strategy, the regime survives, etc. What am I missing? General McKenzie?
So I wouldn't say things are going great. I would say we're executing the campaign plan. We're having good results. It's not a football game, and you can't let your emotions get the better of you. It's a grind. Every day's a grind. You're sending young people out to fight. Hopefully all of them are going to come back. That isn't always the case. the bad guy occasionally has something go well for him. You can't grade it every day. You can't get up and down. You've got to believe in your plan. We have a good plan that's been worked on for a long time. I think the plan will bear fruit. Time will tell. It'll be very clear empirically whether this works or not. So I'm not prepared to. Yeah, I'm not prepared to get emotionally up or down about it one way or another. I know they don't have time for that emotion at Central Command right now.
General Aish, any thoughts?
Well, I think in terms of the operational plan, the strategic goal, it seems like we are making very significant progress to the right direction. As I mentioned during the brief, it has to be completed with the diplomatic effort, and it seems that it goes exactly to that direction. The military's role is really to create those conditions. And it seems like they are achieved so far, but we have to judge it once the agreement will be achieved and implemented. As you know, in this region, it's not enough to achieve an agreement. It has to be implemented. Take a look at Gaza. Take a look at Lebanon. Take a look at other areas. But it seems to me like in terms of making progress, it's done very well, and it's done faster than I would expect it to be done. It's a vast challenge. It's a huge country.
Let me say with you, General Aish, a question from Jonathan Nemeth. Any update on Iron Beam impact on drone attacks?
Okay, so Iron Beam is effective and it's active and it is deployed in the north. We don't have it yet in full capacity in terms of quantities, in terms of systems. At the end of the day, you need to make sure that you are fully deployed, and we have to keep in mind that this is a complementary capability. It's not there by itself doing everything. It's not a silver bullet. It is something that we have developed again together with the U.S. In order to complete our air and missile defense capabilities. It's highly effective against drones, and at the end of the day, everything starts with the ability really to identify and to classify and then to designate these capabilities towards the target. But yes, it is there. In terms of systems, we don't have yet enough systems, but we are working on it as we are working in so many other areas to expand our capabilities.
General McKenzie, Neri Silver from the Financial Times asks, why does it seem like CENTCOM wasn't prepared to deal immediately or swiftly with the blockade of Hormuz, especially since this seems so far like Iran's major silver bullet?
Well, I'm not sure I'd agree with that assertion. I think the plan is you build your plan off the forces that you have. We're not going to station a number of destroyers in the Middle East in perpetuity. You're not going to keep 10 or 15 destroyers here. You're not going to be able to maintain the forces that are necessary to immediately reopen it if something like this happens. So we've always thought there'd be a struggle over this. I'm not sure that this is off the CENTCOM plan. Is it frustrating? Would you like for it to be open? Certainly. But the nature of warfare is you can't get everything you want at once. You have to, sometimes it takes a little while to get that. And I think we're working toward that end right now. Remember, I go back to a point I made earlier. This is a clash of wills. The other side gets a vote. They have good ideas within their framework, and they're going to exercise those good ideas. It's up to us to thwart and prevent them. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of that right now.
Our next question comes from Len Hodorkovsky, who asks, President Trump said, we won't leave until the work is completed. We don't want to come back every 2 years. If the hostilities ended today, assuming we can't trust the regime, would we be in a predicament of potentially having to keep coming back every couple of years? Is the military operation, as you're seeing it unfold, designed with an option for regime change? Joe McKenzie, start with you.
So I think the United States is not pursuing regime change directly. It may be a product of what we're doing. And of course, the leadership of the regime has changed pretty significantly over the last few weeks. So look, I think we'd like to get to a point where there's going to be some entity in Tehran that will negotiate the objectives we want for this campaign, whether it's a completely new regime or a version of this regime that is so affected by pressure that they're willing to make these concessions, I don't think it matters going forward. Look, we're always going to have something in the theater to look at these guys because it's difficult for me to conceive that Iran's going to go completely away. But it could be a much smaller force than what we have now. We've demonstrated pretty clearly our ability to flex forces back in should it be necessary to do so. And that fact's not lost on Iran.
General Aish, your thoughts on
Well,
whether we'll have to
I
go
think
back?
I don't think we will have to go back. It's really a function of what type of agreement will be achieved and who will be, in power in Iran. In that sense, I'd like to say two sensitive things. One, there are visible actions that we are discussing and maybe the world can see, and there are invisible capabilities implemented in this war. And not everything is immediately effective. We have to be very patient. In certain areas, you are planting seeds and we are waiting them to grow. And in that sense, I think we are creating new circumstances that will allow a significant change in Iran. And this is by itself will be the solution or the answer if we will have to be back or not. I'm not sure it's totally aligned with the kinetic capabilities that are implemented. And keep in mind that there are areas that were not implemented yet. Think about an infrastructure paralysis that can be achieved via a kinetic or cyber capabilities. These tools were not used yet. And they can drive the public and the population and those who are in power to take actions and decisions to different directions. So I'm not sure that everything is visible, and I'm not sure that everything is totally synchronized with the clock. The international community can see. We have to understand that there are some residual effects and ongoing impact that we'll see in the near and far future.
All right. Well, with that, let me just ask you very quickly, what are you going to be looking for in the next days or week operationally to sort of determine if the plan is still unfolding as it should, General McKenzie?
I think we look at how we're doing in the Strait of Hormuz. That'll become apparent over the next few days if we're having the success we want, and what decisions we're going to make about proofing a path through for ships, either warships that might bring Marines into the Gulf or other ships to come through. I think that's going to be very important in the next few days. And the second thing is we would look for a continued decline in Iranian ballistic missile activity.
Okay. General Aish, what are you going to be looking for?
I'll focus on the production capabilities of the ballistic missiles and make sure that we degrade them to the lowest level that we can. Obviously, it goes the second level after making sure that in terms of the nuclear program, it is shattered as much as we can. And the rest will be achieved, I assume, via either diplomatic or massive kinetic means that will be implemented in the future.
Great. Well, General Aish, General McKenzie, thank you very much for your insights today. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. And please stay tuned in to jinsa.org for all our latest updates and analysis as these operations continue. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Blaze. Thank you, General McKenzie.
Same to y'all.